The first thing that hit him was the sound of breaking glass, sharp, sudden, and terrifying enough that the little girl holding his hand flinched as if the world had snapped in two. Liam froze in the middle of the glossy marble hallway, his heart hammering as he realized the champagne flute had fallen from his elbow, the one he hadn't noticed brushing against a passing waiter's tray. Crystal shards glittered like ice under the afternoon sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Delmara Estate, and every perfectly dressed guest turned to stare. His daughter Ava clutched his pant leg as if afraid the shining floor might break beneath them. In that moment he felt an old, familiar fear rising, the same fear that had followed him since the day he became a single father, fear of being the wrong person in the wrong place, fear that everyone silently judged him, fear that he had somehow trespassed into a world where he didn't belong. If you're watching this on Ripple of Love and you believe in hope, compassion, and second chances, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps stories like this reach more hearts. The guests whispered behind their glimmering glasses, their designer outfits catching the daylight as if they were made of silver threads. Liam wanted to apologize, to disappear, to crawl back into the quiet, small life he knew, anything to escape the feeling of being a mistake standing in a palace. He had arrived here for Ava, only Ava, because her school had offered scholarships funded by the Delmara Foundation, and this daytime charity luncheon was part of the process. He wanted to give her a better life, one he never had. Yet now, surrounded by the rich and polished, he felt like a smudge on a perfect canvas. He guided Ava to a corner near a sunlit terrace door, his breath still unsteady. He tried brushing glass from his shoes with his trembling hand, noticing how worn the soles were, how they contrasted with the immaculate white stone floor. He knew he didn't fit in the moment he walked through the estate gates, past manicured gardens whose flowers seemed too perfect to be real. The scent of jasmine rode the warm breeze, mixing with the distant sound of a fountain cascading in rhythmic harmony. Everything was cinematic, elegant, orchestrated. And he felt like a scratch on the film. Ava looked up at him, her hair tied in the same loose braid he'd practiced 100 times until he got it right. Her innocent eyes asked a question she didn't voice, "Are we leaving?" He almost nodded. Maybe they should. He didn't want her to see him fall apart again. She had already seen so much. When his wife died 3 years ago, life had collapsed quietly, like a building whose foundation had weakened beyond repair. He remembered the hospital walls, the cold white light, the nurse who couldn't meet his eyes. He remembered holding Ava as she cried without understanding why her mother wasn't coming back. Since then, everything he did was for her, every job, every exhausted night, every early morning. Yet moments like this, moments where he felt like an intruder in places that promised opportunity, pulled at all of his scars. As people resumed their conversations, he tried to steady himself. The estate staff swept away the broken glass, efficient and silent, but the embarrassment continued to pulse through him. He reached into his pocket and touched the small wooden bird Ava had carved in art class. She had slipped it into his hand earlier, saying it was a lucky bird. He held on to that small warmth now, grounding himself. A breeze pushed the terrace door open slightly, carrying sunlight and soft laughter from outside. Liam looked into the garden, where tables were set under silk canopies. The daylight painted everything in gentle gold, bouquets of pastel flowers, polished silver trays, the ripples of the nearby pond. He watched people mingle effortlessly, their confidence radiating like natural light. And he felt a familiar knot tightening in his chest. This world wasn't his. He was a mechanic, a widower, a man who packed lunches in reused containers and counted every dollar. What was he doing here, wearing a suit borrowed from a neighbor, pretending he could offer Ava the opportunities she deserved? Then he turned and saw her for the first time. Isadora Delmara. The billionaire hostess of the luncheon. The woman whose name was etched on the foundation banners, whose family owned half the skyline, whose every move was chronicled by magazines he never bought. She walked with quiet purpose, sunlight catching the faint shimmer of her champagne-colored dress. People parted for her without being asked. Yet her expression wasn't the detached elegance he had expected. There was something weary in her eyes, something that spoke of unspoken stories, something human beneath the wealth and spotlight. Liam didn't know she had noticed the broken glass. He didn't know she had seen the tremor in his hands or the way he shielded Ava like a man used to fighting for scraps of safety. He didn't know that behind her poised confidence, she carried her own grief and loneliness, years of pressure from a family that measured worth in billions, years of pretending she didn't feel hollowed out by a childhood raised by nannies instead of parents, a marriage that had ended publicly and painfully. She understood feeling out of place more than anyone realized. As she walked toward him, he stiffened. He was sure she had come to politely escort him out, to tell him the scholarship event was for qualified participants, or that maybe he should return with different attire. He braced himself, already imagining how Ava's face would fall. He prepared for humiliation, prepared for the reminder that he lived on the outside of every circle that mattered. But instead, she stopped close enough that he could smell the soft scent of lilies from her perfume. The daylight framed her silhouette as a quiet breeze tugged gently at her hair. She looked at Ava first, her gaze softening, then at Liam with a kind of understanding he hadn't expected from someone so distant from his world. And in that moment, something shifted. The tension in his shoulders loosened, just enough to breathe. The narrator's voice in his mind expected judgment. Instead, what he sensed was something like recognition, two people standing on opposite sides of a wall neither had built, suddenly seeing the cracks. He felt words catch in his throat, but before he could speak, the moment seemed to stretch. The estate around them faded into a backdrop of warm afternoon light, swaying garden trees, and distant music. His heart was still battered from embarrassment, but something new flickered under the surface, a fragile spark of hope. And then she said the words that would replay in his mind long after the day ended, words that would reshape the way he saw himself, words that carried a warmth he hadn't felt in years. She told him, with a gentle certainty he couldn't explain, that he was exactly where he belonged. The rest of the event unfolded like sunlight slowly breaking through heavy clouds. She guided him and Ava to a calm corner of the garden where children painted wooden toys. Ava's laughter returned as she dipped a paintbrush into bright colors, and Liam felt the tension leaving her little shoulders. Isadora stayed nearby, talking to Liam about the scholarship, about Ava's drawings, about resilience. Their conversation flowed with surprising ease, as if they were two weary travelers who had finally found someone who understood the long road behind them. Throughout the afternoon, Liam noticed how she checked on guests quietly, ensuring no one felt left out. He noticed how she touched the bark of an old oak tree while talking, as if grounding herself in nature. He noticed her loneliness too, hidden in the pauses between her warm smiles. It made her seem more human than her billions ever could. As the sunlight deepened into a soft amber glow, Liam found himself thinking that maybe belonging wasn't about money or status. Maybe it was about someone seeing the parts of you you kept hidden, even from yourself. Right before the final emotional moment of the story, I'd love for viewers to comment below, what moment in your life made you feel seen when you felt invisible? As the luncheon came to an end, Isadora stepped beside Liam again. She quietly informed him that Ava had not only passed the evaluation but had been selected for the full scholarship. He felt his chest tighten with overwhelming relief. He looked at Ava, who was holding her newly painted wooden bird, the colors bright and hopeful under the fading daylight. Something inside him cracked, then healed, like a wound finally given permission to close. Near the ending of this story, if it touched your heart, please support it on Ripple of Love so more people can feel its warmth. As guests drifted away and the gardens quieted, Liam took Ava's hand. For the first time in a long time, his steps felt lighter. The estate no longer seemed like a world he didn't belong to, it felt like a place where he had been seen without judgment. He turned back once more and found Isadora watching him with a soft, unwavering smile, a smile that said she understood battles he never spoke of. And in that final glance, he realized that belonging wasn't granted by wealth or status. It grew in the spaces where kindness met courage, where broken people recognized strength in each other. He walked toward the gates with a renewed sense of hope,